21222. We are live on Cafe Lockdown. I got the great sign from the tech man. Well, it seems to say we're live here. We've been running now for 25 seconds, so I'm assuming we're going to live on this. I've just got the word from the tech man who just said that'll do for the sound. So you know when you hear that'll do, they'll be right. There's Michael Gray Griffiths coming to frame there now. We're live. As per usual, this is a professional operation, and you can tell it is by the backdrop that we're using here, which is a park, basically. It's a park in it's a park in Ballarat for the Eureka weekend. I think it's 1854 was the Eureka uprising.
167th anniversary this year.
167th anniversary this year. There was 30 diggers killed in that uprising when Governor Hotham came in too hard for wanting licenses from the diggers. And I believe there was 6 troopers that were fatalities as well. So it just goes to show that the state in the state of Victoria, can fire more than just rubber bullets on the population. It has had a history of it. But we've got the Right Honourable Kelly here. He addressed the crowd today, and as he did yesterday in Melbourne too, which I heard more of yesterday in Melbourne. Well done, mate. But I was talking to Craig before, and he's got like personal details, like which is a potential vaccine injury, but it might not be. But he's uncertain about it with his son. And Craig was telling me about that. So I'd just like to ask him, what's happened with your son there, Craig?
Oh, look, we're talking now 25 years ago when my son was born. He was born with Down syndrome. I try not to make too much of this, but people call me an anti-vaxxer, so I think it's important that I address it. He was born with Down syndrome, and that was comes as a great shock, and it's something you wish upon no parent. And when he was 3, he had his normal vaccinations, and from that day afterwards of those vaccinations, he hasn't spoken a word since.
And was he speaking before then?
He was developing his language slowly with the Down syndrome as an intellectual disability. He was developing slowly, but he was able to say a few words, mum, dad, sort of thing. But he lost all language after those vaccines.
Has he been diagnosed as being autistic?
Yes, he is a significant autism. So he doesn't have any language now at the age of 25. But that's not the reason why I'm so passionate about this cause, about the mandates. It's issues of freedom.
Before I get to that, Craig, and I want to come to that straight away, I just want to, like that about your son, that happening to your son, is there like a certain amount of, I know with my children, there's guilt. I have a lot of guilt as a parent about how their life could be or should have been if only. Is there guilt there for you in that respect?
Of course there is. You want to try and do the best that you can for your kids. That's just natural sort of thing. And look, it makes you also respect and value everyone's life. In his little world, he's safe and he's happy and he's comfortable, and that's all you can wish for. You think back that should have you done this? Should have you done this? What if? And you can't undo those things, and you can't let those things eat away at you forever. Otherwise, you can't function. And if you're not functioning as a normal person, you're not doing the best thing by your kids. So you've got to try and sort of park those ideas and just get on with life and make the best of every single day.
I can see you getting a bit emotional there, Craig. And it's just the truth. I notice at the moment, I'm finding myself getting quite emotional at times about life because there's something else being asked of me, something else being asked of all of us at this time, because it's such a trying time in the Australian community. Often people are coming up to me because of my association with the show, and they're saying to me, wow, thanks so much for doing this show. And then suddenly they're overwhelmed with emotions, and someone's crying and I'm holding them or I'm not holding them or whatever, and they're saying, I'm so sorry, I wish I wasn't crying. Are you finding that more when you walk around the Australian community at the moment?
Today or this weekend in Melbourne's been pretty tough. There's so many people that come up to me with just such tragic stories about how their lives have been just totally ruined. Like there was a guy he was a forklift driver from the Philippines. He says, all I want to do, he lives at home with his mum, 60 years old. He says, all I want to do is just go to work, enjoy my odd beer in here. He says, they've stopped me from working because I'm not injected. I spoke to a doctor here, and she said she'd migrated out from Malaysia because here we have more freedoms, and those freedoms have been taken away from her. I spoke to a lady that was she was a animal rescuer. And so she's rescuing animals on the side of the road, a volunteer, and they told her that she can't do her job. I spoke to a young guy that It says he lost everything that went to the Salvation Army as the last stop to try and get, and he's not allowed in the Salvation Army store because he's not injected. This just story after story after story of just insanity. It was insanity since I walked into this place. I got into Melbourne Airport and I had a car. I was sort of, rather than I can get a Comcar as which is a government car to drive around, but I prefer to drive myself. I'm not a very good passenger at times, I must admit. I'd rather drive and I can go where I want, sort of thing. So I'd organised to hire a car, and that I could go up to Ballarat, up here, and I went to, and I had all my signs with me. I had a lot of like the freedom signs. I had them like on a trolley, a baggage trolley sort of thing. The baggage guys to give me a good cheer, and people give me a cheer as I go to the airport. I thought, yeah, bugger it. I'm not frightened to hide these signs sort of thing. So I went to the check-in counter. It was the budget one at Melbourne Airport. I said, here's my driver's license, mate. You got a booking under Craig Kelly? He says, you got your vaccine certificate. And I thought he was joking. Right? I seriously thought this is a joke. I thought, yeah, mate, you've seen my signs. I'm leading the charge against all these vaccine certificates. He asked me the vaccine certificate, and then this shock came over me, and it was true. I could not hire a car in the state of Victoria unless I had a vaccine certificate. And then just to be at the top of Bourke Street Mall yesterday, and it was before the crowds got there. It was about 10 o'clock, and I tried to go around and get a cup of coffee. You could see the despair and the destruction that it's happened. Like what should be prime real estate there from Parliament House straight down Bourke Street Mall was boarded up shops. It was dirty. There was graffiti. It wasn't the Melbourne that I'd always, there was always the hustle and bustle, and every second person, everyone had a cup of coffee in their hand, and everyone was like dressed everyone was really like, everyone in Melbourne would dress a lot better than they would in Sydney. And it was that sort of sophistication, and it was just to just come here and to hear these stories of despair and people just not knowing where their lives are going and losing their direction, and for nonsense. Like you look at the science, you look at the data, all the science says this is just complete rubbish. Right? You look at the data of the UK, you are more likely to have COVID if you've been injected. And they're forcing mandates upon people. It is just beyond the pale what's doing it. And now we're here today, they want to start injecting 5-year-old kids. Oh, come on. And when enough people are going to wake up to say enough is enough, we have health bureaucrats that are totally out of control in this country. They're ignoring the science and ignoring the data, and the harm that they are doing to the society is just immeasurable.
It's the inconsistencies, isn't it, Craig? Like you said, because as a federal parliamentarian, you're allowed to fly, obviously unvaccinated. Now, I couldn't fly unvaccinated, but you're not allowed to hire a car. So you can get to Victoria, but then you can't move around Victoria. That's
just, so I can fly from Sydney to Melbourne, but I couldn't fly from Sydney to Brisbane, even as a federal parliamentarian. I couldn't fly from Sydney to Adelaide as a parliamentarian. I couldn't fly to Sydney to Hobart or Sydney to Perth. Sydney to Melbourne is one of the few routes that I can fly on, right? So I can sit in a plane, but I couldn't hire a car. Right now, but I could get in a taxi. But this is just the insanity of the legislation.
Were you expected to wear a mask in the plane?
You were, yeah. Looking
until they fed you, I guess, and you're allowed to take your mask off.
Yeah, when you had your glass of water, because you have, there's not the tucker on the plane these days is pretty skinny sort of thing. So, but look, there's just nonsense after nonsense after nonsense, and it is the harm that we are doing to people's lives it's indescribable, and that's why it was important to come up today here to Ballarat, because of the parallels through history. And like if you go back and you read the history of the Eureka Stockade, it was, what were they ultimately objecting about? They had to have a piece of paper in their pocket to work. So unless you had that's what it was, the government miner's license. So the government would issue a piece of paper, and without that piece of paper, you couldn't work. And the police would come around and demand to see your piece of paper. Otherwise, they would beat you up and throw you in jail. And here we are, 167 years later, and people in Victoria cannot work and denied the right to work unless they've got a digital piece of paper in their pocket issued by the government.
That's what the UAP is about, isn't it? Restoring sort of that ingenuity for the individual to be able to go out and achieve and do what they need to do and not be stopped by government mandate and protocols that just make it impossible for people to live their lives.
When you look at innovation, you're talking about how do you create wealth in society, right? Now, you can't have better hospitals, you can't have better roads and schools and everything unless you create the wealth. Remember, we as government have no money at all. We rely on people out there building and making and growing things, right? And selling things to create the wealth, to add value to the economy. And you're taking that in, and that all comes about by someone saying, you know what, I think I can do this bit better, or I've got an idea that is better than what the status quo is. And that's how we progress almost as a species, as a society. People say that I've got a better idea, and you trial, and 99 out of 100 of those ideas don't work. But the one that does, you've got to be able to roll it out and copy it. And that's why we've been able to build this wonderful society in the 167 years since the Eureka Stockade.
So, Craig, too, just like you flew into a bit of your own political storm, not just the storm that's happening in Melbourne anyway, because someone who was there instrumental, maybe not even instrumental, but at the inception, if you like, of you becoming the leader of the UAP, a guy called Romeo Georges. And I saw some of his earlier podcasts, and he was so excited about what the potential for change might be. And then he's just come out and he dumped on you a couple of days ago. I know I had about 8 different people direct me to that actual Twitter rant that he had. So could you just talk a bit about that?
It was very sad to see him do that. And it was very disappointing that he didn't at least say to me, someone's told me this, what's your response? And basically, almost everything he said was false. Now, where I don't think he's done it intentionally, I think someone's got into his head and told him a whole lot of false things, which he's repeated. And also, too, at one stage, he did want money from the UAP or from Palmer's organisation to do the blogging and like you're doing. Look, I spoke with Clive about that, and his opinion was, we don't want to be having cash for comment, right? We want to have, if people, community, independent journalists are reporting on what we're doing and they support us, it's got to come from their heart and their conscience, not because we're putting cash in their pocket. And that was the policy.
And did he accept that? Did he accept that at the time?
Oh, yeah. Look, I said I tried my best to see what I could do. That was the policy, and I think after that, it seemed to never be the same. So that was disappointing.
It's difficult, though, isn't it? And I think a lot of people maybe are politically naive and they don't understand how the political system works, because if you run for parliament, you're not getting paid for any of the running you do, and you only get paid if you win the prize. Even if you come a close second, there's nothing, you're gone. And it can, depending on who you've run for, it can cause a lot of difficulty. And it could cause a lot of difficulty running for the UAP because there's no friend of the media, clearly, and the mainstream. So I think maybe there's a bit of political naivety on Romeo's part.
We'll give all our candidates as much support we can. We make sure that they won't have to basically put their hand in their pocket to do things, but they'll have to basically put in a lot of their own time. That's what they'll require them to do. Now, some candidates thought, if I become United Australia candidate, I get paid money. Now, I explained that's not the case, right? We don't pay. We want people that are run.
I think people just think sort of Clive's a bit of a cash cow, and that means they're going to just dip in and get a bit of cash.
Yeah. Look, unfortunately, that's how some people think. But it was more specifically some of the things that he said that really disappointed me, and have actually the only winner out of this is Dan Andrews and people like Scott Morrison. Like they run. Oh, who are you going to preference? Who are you going to preference? Right? You're going to give your preferences. You're going to give your votes to another party. Look, this is just complete and utter nonsense.
What was the criticism he was making about the LNP? I was a bit confused by that. It didn't sort of make sense to me that the LNP votes won't be accepted, but then after the election, then the votes will go somewhere else because the LNP's name's Liberal National. Not LNP, the Liberal Democrats. Yeah, its name is too close to Liberals.
This actually shows how confused he is. He doesn't know. Look, the preference system, if you're not used to it, it is difficult to explain and difficult to understand. Now, firstly, it was true several elections ago in the Senate elections that you would vote either below the line or above the line. So you'd vote for the party above the line or all the candidates below the line. Now, if you voted below the line, you had to fill out every square, which in New South Wales was like 100 people. You had to put 110 numbers. Or you voted above the line, you just put one for the party you voted on. But where your preferences then went in the Senate was subject to basically a quasi-secret deal that the party had put in, which you could go ask for it if you wanted to, but people didn't. So you found one party was having their name up for the election campaign and giving their votes to other parties. That's how it works. That no longer works like that. That system is out. So the only person that allocates the preference is the person with a pen in their hand, right? The parties do not give votes to other people, right? You have to get that through. There's no secret deals. That system was many years ago. It's the person, each individual voter gets to allocate their individual preferences where they go.
But Clive did come out and just do a deal with
okay.
Campbell Newman, didn't he, for the Liberal Democrats?
Remember, the way the preferential system works, if you're an unsuccessful candidate, so if you come last in a particular seat or a particular vote, they then allocate your preferences. And they keep going up until they get the last two candidates standing, right? So the question is, will the Liberal Democrats get above the United Australia Party? Now, at the last election, the United Australia Party got around 450,000 votes. Now, we're going to get multiple times the next election, right? But last year, we got 450. The Liberal Democrats got about, I think, 30,000 votes. So we got 10 times the number of votes that we got from them. So the real question was, where were those Liberal Democrat preferences going to go? Now, we wanted to make sure that they didn't go to the Liberal Party. So a lot of people naturally, I'll vote Liberal Democrats one, and who's Carl, a bit of speak.
There's a Maserati going past. Someone's doing well in the pandemic.
Yeah. So you'd put one in the. If you put one, so you're voting. You vote one for the Liberal Democrats. We wanted to make sure those votes then didn't go to the Liberal Party. We wanted to make them to go straight to the United Australia Party. So we said, on your recommendations, remember it's only the recommendation. So what we were to use the Liberal Democrat Party. You recommend to your voters who are going to vote Liberal Democrats, which for whatever reason we prefer them, of course, to vote for United Australia Party. If you want to vote Liberal Democrats one, put United Australia Party two. That was the deal, and that's what they did. And because we will get significantly more votes than they will, their votes will come to us. Now, this is where I think Mr. George has got confused. There's legislation that went through the Parliament that says the Liberal Democrats may not be able to use their name because of the it's similar to the Liberal Party.
Yeah, because people would assume sometimes that it is the Liberals. Is that? But that decision must be made soon because the federal elections early next year.
Correct. So that is pending. That decision hasn't been finalised yet. The Liberal Democrats are challenging in the court. We don't know. It may happen. It may not. If it does happen, the Liberal Democrats will simply change their name. Now, one of the problems they will have, it makes it difficult. They've then got to market themselves under another name. They may call themselves the Libertarian Democratic Party. They may call themselves the Libertarian. They've got to come up with another name, which makes it difficult for them to do it in time. But we will still have that preference thing where, especially in Queensland, where it's most important, where Campbell Newman will get a significant number of votes. We then want those votes flying onto us. So people have to understand the Liberal Democrats have nothing to do with the Liberal Party. They're not preferencing the Liberal Party. They are preferencing us. And ultimately, the bottom line is that the United Australia Party or no other party in the election campaign gives their votes to other people. It's the person with a pen in hand that allocates the preferences. So we need to do a big campaign between now and the next election to educate people and inform them, because it does cause a lot of confusion, and you can see that confusion in how Mr. George has got that totally mixed up and confused in his head.
There's another thing he was saying about Clive. He sort of seemed to think, Clive was going to get some secret special deal going with the Liberals once he preferenced the Liberals, and then they give him this extra land that he could become a wealthy man and start mining. Well, I had a couple of questions that I thought, well, even if that was the case, is it a bad thing that someone like Clive did get some land and maybe he does start doing some mining or something and he employs people as a result? So what's your thoughts on that?
Again, it's just a nonsense comment with respect. Firstly, the mining leases are handed out by the states. Now, if Mr. Palmer wanted to use his political advantage to get more mining licenses, he wouldn't do it federally, he'd do it in the states, because the federal government doesn't hand out mining licenses or give out land as he described. It's the state governments that do that. So it just shows that he's just sort of got that all confused. He also attacked Mr. Palmer over a court case in Western Australia. Now, again, it's clear that someone's gotten in his head and told him this without him understanding what the facts are. That is a case where Mr. Palmer is fighting for property rights. He had property rights taken away from him from the Western Australian government. He is trying to set a precedent in the High Court that protects everyone's property rights. So if he gets that precedent set, it's a precedent against state governments being to appropriate your property right. it's a complicated case. But the idea that he's trying to take money off the people is just it's exactly what you would expect Dan Andrews infiltrators to spread that propaganda, to hope that it catches somewhere. So it's very disappointed that came from someone that was supposedly on our side.
So, Craig, just ask you, what is it about Clive Palmer, that he can draw hostility from people? Is because he's so wealthy, or he's done well, or because I'll just give this example. I was watching him address the Freedom Rally in Brisbane a couple of weekends ago, and the MC introduced him as someone he'd be okay with because your enemy's enemy is your friend. I mean, talk about damn praise.
Look, we unfortunately have a bit of a tall poppy syndrome in the country. When someone's very successful, we like to pull them down. Mr. Palmer's been controversial. He was in Parliament for a while before, and he was in Parliament there for 3 years, and that was I had some disagreements with him when he was in Parliament at times, and people said to me, "How can you trust Clive?" Because we don't need to trust him. He needs to trust us. He's the one giving us the resources to fight the next election. And look, and there's a lot of other minor parties that have done some great work, and they've got great causes, and they're honourable, and they're noble people, and they're fighting the cause. But there's no point going into a fight and fighting a cause and being smashed. And that's the reality, is unless you've got massive financial resources to take on the major parties, you're going to get smashed. Right? So we need those resources. Clive has been generous enough to give them to us. We're the ones that pick up and we run with it, and that's going to give us the opportunity at this next election to fight against these major parties on a level playing field. So this will be the first time, I think, almost in our nation's history, where you'll have a real strong third party running that can take the majors on and can match them on the ground in resources, can match them in advertising, can match them or will beat them with the number of people on the ground on election campaign.
85,000 members, isn't it?
85,000. Well, it'll be 100,000 very soon. We'll give it that 100,000 up. Plus, we'll have all volunteers as well. So we will have more people on the ground on election day than both the major political parties. We'll match them with the advertising. We'll match them in the newspapers. We'll match them on television. Unless you're going to do that, you're not in the hunt. That's the sad reality of the political situation in Australia today.
Well, I heard that Clive said he might even take Dan Andrews' new health and wellbeing legislation to the High Court or to a court. Is that something that he would actually consider doing? Or
I've spoken to Clive this morning. He's putting some extra lawyers on. He's appointed a lawyer up in New South Wales who'll be working full time for us. He'll be looking at running several cases at the moment. They're financing the case in Queensland for the nurses and for the doctors, trying to get so they won't be kicked out of their job. He's looking at doing similar things in New South Wales. So there's a lot of other legal cases. So we can also, while we're waiting for the election, there's also political cases that we can fight against these things, against some of these mandates, to declare them illegal and to try and get people back into their jobs for Christmas time.
So, and you had some good news yesterday too. You got to endorse the candidate for Flinders in Melbourne, a star candidate. And can you talk to us a little bit about Morgan C. Jonas and what chances you think he might have to? Yeah, but I thought we'd lead up with this is the lead in. Yeah. If you could just tell us about that.
I've been following Morgan for quite a while. I thought this bloke would be a good candidate if we could get him. So we had some discussions and said, mate, would you be interested?
So who approached who?
I approached him. I saw some of the speeches that he'd given on the steps of Palmer. I thought, that's pretty good speeches. This guy, I think, has got what it takes. So he was going to take on Greg Hunt. Now, I think that maybe there might be a little bit of coincidence in there that Greg Hunt's decided not to run.
Greg could hear the footsteps. Could hear the footsteps.
Yeah. So Flinders we're going to be targeting all seats in Melbourne, but Flinders with Morgan as a seat, we're really going to give an absolute crack at. He's a great guy. He's got wonderful community support. I met a lot of his supporters last night, and they're going to be out and they're going to be working every single day between now and that next election to see that we can have Morgan as the next member in the federal parliament as a member for Flinders.
Greg Kelly, thanks for your time. I think it's a perfect segue to go to Michael and Morgan.
Morgan wants to be interviewed by you because you're a killer political interview. And I'm just a happy-go-lucky schmuck.
Oh, that's outrageous. And not only that, I had just gotten through that and I thought, I've gotten to the end. You beauty. I get to sit out.
I shall do the winner.
Okay. Thanks, mate. All right. Morgan C. Jonas. Hey, mate. Good to see you, brother. Yeah, and you just had a ringing endorsement from the leader of your party, the UAP. He approached you, which is a fantastic thing. So can you just tell me how that came about?
Okay, so I've been a big supporter of Craig's work, really since from when he started speaking out about alternative treatments and all the fire he came under, and we all learnt a lot. And Craig and my fiance Monica have conducted interviews together. Craig and I have conducted interviews together. So it really kicked off approximately 12 months ago, our line of communication. And when Craig joined UAP, I felt inspired to do the same. And I submitted my candidate application like everybody else, filled out the form, did the video, and here we are now. So endorsed for the seat of Flinders.
Oh, that's pretty exciting then, isn't it? This is the first time you've ran for politics, is it?
That's correct. First time.
And so I've told you this before. You're one of the first people I watched with the MCJ report, and it was great. You know, and you were just really articulating some concerns that I was feeling, but I hadn't quite been able to articulate them yet. Probably didn't feel comfortable about coming forward with them, and I saw that in you, which was quite inspiring, I'll say, mate. So thanks for that. But what made you first decide, no, there's something wrong here in the state of Victoria, and I'm going to speak out about it?
So it was probably around the year 2015, I started taking more of an interest in public affairs, more specifically our Premier Daniel Andrews and his multiple trips to China, whereby he was engaging in secretive meetings behind closed doors with Chinese officials. I felt like he was filling the shoes of a foreign diplomat rather than a state premier, and he was negotiating deals, infrastructure deals that involved various corporations in China, some controlled by the Chinese government. And to me, that was very uncomfortable. So I began speaking out about it, and I held protests against what Daniel Andrews was doing, what I believed was a potential threat to our sovereignty and our own jobs security. And that's really from when it kicked off. From 2015, I knew that I wanted to get involved and speak out.
Now, something I meant to ask your leader, your boss, and I forgot, was he had a bit of an egg boy moment on stage yesterday. Where there's a guy chucking a couple of eggs at Craig. Is that something that you've seen before in political life? I know with Fraser Anning had some eggs. Senator Fraser Anning has an egg chucked at him. Is that something you could expect to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anybody that gets involved in public life could be potentially the target of some type of violent attack. So, yeah, somebody tried to, as far as I'm concerned, assault Craig Kelly, throwing an object, and it's something that could happen. So we really need to be ready for everything. We know there could be some nasty things said by the mainstream media. There could be physical attacks on the ground by disgruntled people who hold their own grievances for whatever reason. That's just the risk we take.
So are you ready for that sort of rough and tumble of politics? I noticed Craig just kept going on. It didn't seem to affect him. He was unflappable in that respect. Are you ready for that sort of difficulty in political life?
I'm ready for whatever.
There can be no doubt that the mainstream media are not going to take to you warmly. And are you ready for that sort of... They can run a pretty nasty anti-campaign, as they seem to do against the UAP. Is that something you're ready for?
Yeah, absolutely. What concerns me way more than nasty press or nasty people is the direction our country is heading in, unless regular Aussies step up to fill the shoes of...
What direction is that, Morgan? What direction is that?
More government control, more rules. We see the government getting involved in almost every aspect of our lives. We see more surveillance, whether it's QR codes, etc. And what we've noticed throughout history is that once government obtains larger amounts of control, they don't want to give it up. And I don't believe Australians want to be controlled by an oversized government.
It's like China's the elephant in the room for this, isn't it? You say like Dan Andrews has gone over there and almost in a diplomatic capacity, much more than you would expect of a state premier. And that politics seems to come with China, and we trade with China. It's our largest trading partner. So aren't we stuck in a bind?
Yeah, so I think it's a huge problem that needs addressing. Our economy is overwhelmingly dependent on...
That's Morgan's phone. That's That's the health minister ringing him now, just telling him that he's not going to run.
My apologies about
That's
that.
all right, mate.
Yeah, so it's
Greg Hunt.
Greg Hunt, right?
Sorry, Greg, you're yesterday's man. See you, mate.
Greg Hunt's history now. So yeah, our economy is far too dependent on the Chinese economy, and unfortunately, that's the result of decades worth of trade deals that have put all of our eggs in one basket. So diversifying trade, diversifying export destinations around the world, expanding our economy into different markets, I think is something that should be treated very, very seriously, so that we're not in a position whereby a single foreign nation can dictate terms in terms of policy and other aspects of our lives.
So that's sort of like an overview of the international political scene, which of course is really good to have. But then on the ground, you have to win the votes of the people, the electorate of Flinders. And so what will that involve? What do you have to do for that?
So the objective is to meet as many people as possible from the seat of Flinders to understand the concerns people have, small business, what are the issues, address the issues, and also, of course, to keep in mind national issues, as of course it is federal parliament.
It's a pretty affluent area, isn't it, Flinders? So what are the sort of issues of the people in Flinders?
Well, I'm going to get a better understanding of that from when I start speaking to people, but I'm fortunate to have a really strong supporter base in the seat of Flinders at the moment. So there's a lot of COVID-related issues. There's a lot of businesses that, of course, have gone under, unable to open their doors. People are concerned about the segregation. People are concerned about losing their freedom of choice. And so that's a starting point, but we're going to expand into all areas that people are concerned with. And that takes from speaking to people. That requires speaking to people and conversations.
Pressing the flesh. So I'm sure they've done some polling. The UAP would have done some polling in Flinders. So what's it looking like?
There's some general polling. There was a recent survey conducted by Small Business Australia, which has shown a lot of metrics over 50% in terms of people that are open to voting for a smaller party, people who are developing feelings of not trusting the major parties. So there appears to be a really good opportunity for a protest vote right now in terms of voters that are feeling disenfranchised, let down by Labor and Liberal. So us being, of course, a minor party, I'd say that we're in with a fighting chance.
There's a seismic shift, isn't there, happening in the community that I've never felt before, which really would give you a real opportunity, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big reason for that is that we haven't really been too political in our country, and civics isn't taught in schools. And I think that many people can identify with voting along the lines of how their family voted. So I grew up in a Labor household. So without really understanding anything about politics, when I turned 18, who did I start voting for?
It's like your football team, really, wasn't it?
Well, that's it. My football team was assigned to me, you know, at
political philosophy
and political as well. But I think now Australians are becoming very warm to the idea of getting into politics. I think that now more than ever, people are beginning to realise that the major parties don't have their best interest in mind, and that they're more interested in their own careers. And now's the time.
So you spoke to the audience yesterday in Melbourne and announced your candidacy. You didn't speak today. Was it good to have the day off and not have to worry about putting together a political speech? Yeah,
absolutely. I really enjoyed roaming around, meeting people. Shook a lot of hands. I was just really overwhelmed by the passion and enthusiasm that so many people have. People are not discouraged, even though people have been locked down, trampled over by the government. There's no sense of defeat, and that's just there's no words to describe that.
So, I mean, it's been a really tough time for you and the RDA and your fiancée, Monica Smith. I mean, she was locked up for 22 days in the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. That's for she's a political prisoner. How does she feel about you entering the political arena?
Yeah, you're right. It was a horrible experience. 22 days in solitary confinement. I'd define that as torture of somebody who was innocent, and she's very supportive. Monica has built an incredible organisation and has touched all corners of Australia. So she's supportive, and she's backing me 100%, which is just a blessing, really.
It's great to have that support in your corner. I think that's about it. Morgan, thanks, mate. Is there anything else you want to say, just in summing up?
No, I just want to say that you guys are doing a tremendous job with Cafe Locked Out, and you're bringing such great energy and great content to so many people that are appreciative of it, and I'm appreciative as well. So I just want to say thanks.
Great to have you on the show again, Morgan. Good on you. Best of luck with it, mate. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
See you, mate. Good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Morgan C. Jonas. He may be the next member of Flinders in Victoria. And now I'm going to hand you over to Michael. Is that right? Is that what I'm doing? Yes, I am.
That's right.
Thanks, guys.
Now the show's going to go up in Valiant. Zoe. Going to introduce Zoe and her baby. What's the name of the baby again?
Amaya.
Baby and her baby Amaya. We can turn Amaya around. Hi, Amaya. You have anything to say before we start the interview? No. Now, for those who don't know, I'll just get you to put your head a bit back so we can see your lovely face. For those who don't know, Zoe was the young pregnant mother who got arrested in her house. To me, this is where all of this should have ended because it was so abhorrent. But can I ask the one question? How did you feel that day when it was actually happening?
Petrified and scared. Yeah, I had just woken up from a nap because I was in my first trimester of pregnancy. I was sick, and then I was petrified and scared. Yeah, especially for my children. Yeah.
And did they tell you was there any warning that anything would happen, or did they just arrive?
They just arrived. Yeah. No warning, no phone call, no nothing.
And what did you actually do that was so horrible that they had to do that?
Created an event on Facebook to organise a peaceful protest in Ballarat. Had 5 people attending.
So you had 5 people attending a peaceful protest in Ballarat, and that was so dangerous they had to send round, well, the Stasi, basically. Now, how was that the first time in your life that you've been handcuffed?
To be completely honest, no. It's not. I've had my typical teenager years. Yes, a long time ago. Yeah.
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 Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you were going to get arrested though in your kitchen, like you were? I mean, did you envision that in your future when you put up the post?
Absolutely not. Yeah, like I said, I had my teenage years, but now I'm a mother and I'm definitely not a criminal, and yeah.
So you really thought, just as I would have thought at the time, that peacefully protesting was a human right and we could just do it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had no idea at all that, even the stage 3 lockdown that you couldn't protest. I was trying to be a voice for Melbourne. I believe they were in stage 4. So I thought that in Melbourne, they couldn't protest at the time. So I thought, hey, let's do a little something in Ballarat to try to get them out of lockdown. And I was just really worried about people who were locked down. I'm a caring person. And I thought, well, I wonder if there's domestic violence. I wonder if there's suicide rates are going up. And, I was just wondering about those things and, wanted to do something.
When they arrested you, where did they take, what was like being taken away? Did they put you in the back of a paddy wagon, or what happened after the arrest once they'd handcuffed you?
Yeah. Well, they did actually let me change my clothes. So I didn't go down to the police station in my pajamas. I quickly changed my clothes, quickly said bye to my children. And then they put me in the back of, I believe it was just like an unmarked car, just in the back seat. Yeah. So they didn't have any actual police vehicles there. Okay. The whole time I didn't even know if they were police. I didn't know. They were telling me they were private investigators, but honestly, I just thought to myself, well, you could be anyone.
So did they show you any idea that they were police or police badges, anything like that?
They had lanyards around their necks that had pictures on them. But again, I can go down to Office Works and make one of those.
So where did they take you?
To the Ballarat police station. Yeah.
And how long were you there?
Honestly, I can't really remember, but when I try to remember, it felt like about 4 hours. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what did you tell your children as when you said say goodbye to your children? What could you possibly say to the children which would make them understand?
I believe I told them that I was feeling a bit sick and I was just going to the hospital for a checkup, from memory again. Yeah, I lied to my babies.
And what was the feedback like afterwards? Because we were outraged, but we heard that you were getting a lot of flack. So what was the balance of the feedback, good and bad?
um, I think it was mostly good. I think the majority were very supportive. But yeah, there was a few. I dealt with drive-bys of my home and death threats and phone calls, and we went and stayed away from the home for a while because it wasn't feeling safe, and yeah. It was very
So you actually moved away because you weren't feeling safe.
We stayed in a hotel for, I think it was about a week, and yeah, had security sitting out the front of the house, and yeah, it was a lot. Yeah.
Did the mainstream media interview at all at the time?
Yeah, well, they were there when I woke up the next morning, a lot of them at my front door, and I was like, how did you get my address? And it turns out I accidentally put it on Facebook when I recorded the live on the warrant that has my address on it. So those 5 million viewers who saw my arrest also got to see my address. Mm.
Now, how were the mainstream media with you?
Look, honestly, they were pretty good.
Okay.
If I'm completely honest, they were pretty good. I'm going to be honest. I don't support mainstream media. I think they lie a lot, but they were pretty good with me. Yeah.
And the reports that they did, because I've met the journalists on the street. The journalists are cool, but when it actually goes into print or on the news, how were those stories come out?
A lot was left out and edited, and I honestly didn't watch a lot of it, but what I did see, there wasn't much of what I actually had to say that was shared. Yeah.
And what did you want to say?
I can't remember now. I mean, this was 16 months ago, but I know, I spoke on the fact that, I'm just a good person who cares, about the rise in domestic violence and suicide. And, I did definitely touch on those things. And that's what I was really hoping they were going to share, that is why I felt like doing what I did. And I don't believe that got out at all from memory. Yeah.
And what about the charges? I mean, have you been to court? Is it over, or are you still facing charges?
Yeah, so I have court this Friday, the 10th of December in Ballarat. I am still out on bail. My lawyers have said it will most likely, now you want to talk. My lawyers have said it will most likely be dragged out till mid next year. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm under the impression that they're just going to adjourn on Friday. So they've done that a fair bit. Yeah.
Maybe they don't like the idea how the media. I mean, it doesn't look good. You're still this young mother. I mean, what you've done. Well, from my perspective or anyone's perspective, it seems an overreach, really, to what they're doing. Now, I saw you at the march the other day, and everyone was saying she's going to speak. She's very nervous, but in the march, you suddenly let loose.
Yeah, I was so nervous. I was honestly scared as well. Again, I was scared. But yeah, once I actually got up there and gave my speech and, let out the "I've had enough," and the crowd roared for me, I was like, oh, I have supporters here. They're all supporting me. And then it was just after that, I couldn't stop shaking, but it was the excited shaking. It was beautiful. It gave me hope.
And do you have hope going forward and what's everything's happening?
As of this weekend now, I do. thanks to the protest in Melbourne yesterday and the protest here in Ballarat today, I finally have hope again that, you know, this will be dropped in court, and, you know, we are doing something here that is beautiful, and, you know, and that it will make a difference. And yeah, because for a long time there, I was just too scared to speak up. And yeah, so I feel like I'm
Because you-
finding my voice again.
So you're sort of scared that those people would come back, basically.
I've been petrified of being arrested again. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really did affect you deeply. So it traumatized you. I mean, you're still feeling that fear on the stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, and yet the amazing thing is you feel that fear and then you still go and do it. So there's a word for that. So it's called courage.
Oh, awesome. So I've got some courage.
You have tons of courage. Tons of courage. I hear that your husband has had to take the jab.
Yes, he was forced to vaccinate for work purposes to keep a roof over our heads. Yeah, he didn't want it at all, and he really did try to not get it. He took it all the way up at work as high as he could, and he took 2 weeks off work, and he really did try. He didn't want it. You know, pro-choice. I'm not anti-vax. I'm pro-choice.
Yep, same.
Yeah. So yeah, but then push came to shove and he was going to lose his job, and I love him so much for doing what he did for our family.
And has this brought you closer, or has it made you further apart? How's the effect of been?
It's been a journey. So, you know, we did have some disagreements. You know, I felt like I couldn't support what he was doing, especially knowing that he didn't want to do it. You know, how can I support you to do something that I know you don't want to do? So there has been some tension, but we've made it through, and we'll keep making it through. Yeah, he's beautiful.
Well, thank you for coming on. We're really pleasure that you came on. I mean, it's a line in the sand. What happened that day? It's groundbreaking. I remember sitting at home, stunned that it was happening, stunned that this was Australia. I still can't believe we're in Australia at the moment.
I'll say one thing. I'm glad I clicked live on Facebook.
5 million views, amazing.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, who do I call? Do I call my mum? Do I call the police? I was like, I'm just going to click live on Facebook. Someone will come help me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And hopefully I'll see you again, even at the other marches. Will you be
Yes.
speaking?
We'll see what the future holds.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck to you. See you, gorgeous. You want to say anything?
I was arrested too.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for that. So you're up there. So to finish now, we're going to bring on Carla.
Hi.
Squeeze in.
Isn't it?
Now, we had Carla on a few weeks ago in an art show, but because the art world has basically tossed us out, see you later for having the audacity to have an opinion, we're very interested in getting Carla to do a few shows for us to see how they go. And some of the shows we would like to do are about eating disorders.
Yeah. It's something that people are suffering in silence, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know, like the young girls and all of this pressure. And this is like the, you know, what I believe is that there's, you know, this is their way of control, of how they can control what's happening to them right now. And it's just devastating that it's done through food and their health, and it's compromising their health and their lives and their mental well-being, and it's just tragic. So we need to talk about it.
Yeah, and the numbers are up at the moment. They're at epidemic levels and no one's talking about it. So if you're affected by it, maybe a parent of a young girl or a young boy, or you're actually someone who's recovering it and you want to come on and speak, the show will be Carla and yourself and a few other guests, and we'll be in the background doing the producing. But please get in touch. Another thing that we're interested in is talking to nurses.
Yes, absolutely. The sisterhood. We want the sisterhood. We want the nurses. We want the mums, because it's that thing of shame, right? So many people are suffering silently, which is shame. But once you actually speak it into the space, it alleviates, and you don't actually experience the benefits of that until you do it. And then you feel so supported. You can feel held and heard, and this is all. People are needing connection more than anything. So bring the nurses, bring the mums, bring the daughters.
That's it. If you want to
Yeah.
talk, if you want to come on and have an audience with
Healing.
Carla, I think it could be a really healing thing of sharing pain.
Mm.
Now, another topic that's very interesting, if you want to come on, is shared parenting, where one parent wants the kid to get your child to get vaccinated, and the other parent doesn't. Have you heard of this at
Oh
all?
my gosh! Talk about division. That would be what a household to live in. To try and where's the line? I mean, I couldn't imagine compromise. Like, where's the You can't compromise. I mean, you never resolve this. So what do you do?
The other difficult thing is parents that are separated. That's even more difficult.
Yes. So I've heard some horror stories about that, actually, where, when one child's, that the mum can't trust what's happening when the child's with the father. And that's, we're just in a total state of unrest and in this perpetual state of fight, flight, freeze, because it's just trauma everywhere. And even if it is your child going to their fathers or going to their mothers, it's just like.
And you got the government involved as well. So those shows that we're interested
Yeah.
in, if you want to get in touch with us, we'll be setting them up very soon. Now, the other thing, you're still coming to the marches, you're still coming to the protests. How are they feeling? How did you feel once we lost the bill, the battle of the bill?
That was a really solemn day. But then, like, this fight, just, just that energy, that Kundalini energy, if you like, that fire that just is like, now it's got to be about the passports and about the kids and about the mandates, and it doesn't stop. Like, it might have passed, but we don't stop.
Well, the interesting thing at the moment, two interesting things. One, they're getting ready to do children 5 to 11, and I interviewed some people today. If they came, I mean, your children are a bit older than that now. Sorry. But what would you have done in the past if someone had tried to get between you and your young child?
Seriously, you would have to take my life. You would have to take my life. You are not touching my children. And, I feel just as passionate about this for the children out there, because we've got to stand together. And so their children are my children, they're your children. We've got to take care of our kids and fight for them. They can't be jabbing 5-year-olds.
So this is, especially for something can't affect them. So this is the next battleground.
Yeah.
The kill the bill, we lost that one, but the next battleground is the children. That's where we'll be doing. So be doing other things like that. Yeah, go, man. There, but the other thing going from there. Can I ask you though, how are you coping at the moment with the way the world is and not having your usual work and other things? How are you coping?
Well, Michael, I've got practices that keep me grounded, so that I can be in the world and see the chaos of what's taking place and the destruction and the devastation. And I'm finding that my practices, my meditation, it's holding me, and I'm leaning into faith. Like, I just have to. It just has to be done.
And if you lent into faith before, I mean, is that what you grew up with, or is it a new thing for you?
It's a new thing. And it's even that thing, I think I spoke to you earlier about it. It's like, even when you feel you need to trust to lean into faith, then you're not in faith.
Yeah.
Right? If faith is a standalone, and to lean into that encompasses everything. And I'm just finding a lot of solace in that. And it's a powerful time. So yes, no, I've never needed to.
Are you surprised at these marches how many people are walking around holding crucifixes or other religious emblems? It's not like it's becoming cool to do. It's almost becoming righteous to do. And they're like the warriors of God. And it's young people doing it, older people. You see it everywhere.
It is. It's amazing. But it's also a sign of people remembering who they are, you know, and that this is a spiritual war. And yeah, I mean, people are finding great comfort in these in these crucifixes and in their practices and things, aren't they? And it's I don't know really. I don't know what to.
Well, the other thing too, what do you think? This is what I'm just wondering what you think as an empathetic person. Is we come to these marches now. A lot of these people have lost their jobs. They may be losing their houses, and yet they come. They've made their signs, and they're happy. So they're having everything stripped away. The system must be going. They should be unhappy, and yet they're really joyous. How would you explain that?
Because we remain with choice. You know, we've stepped into our integrity and we're living by our highest values, you know, and you can't go wrong when you're doing that, can you? You know, like we're just being so true to who we are. And that's a powerful thing. And then and that can feel very lonely though sometimes, right? And this is why it's so important for us to come together, because the strength of community and tribe that you feel when you come to the marches is really powerful.
Do you think maybe one of the things we're learning is instead of a new phone or a new toaster, one of the most important things we need is each other?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm so excited about the camping and living off the land with the tribe, you know, like how amazing. We're coming back to who we are, the essence of self. This is powerful. This is not, you know, this has been thousands and thousands of years in the making, hasn't it? You know, like here we are. What a wild time to be alive.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? And now you're in the maelstrom, like now you're right in the eye of this rising awokeness.
Oh, look, and it feels incredible because I would rather be right in amongst it than to have my head in the sand and to cop a walloping without having seen it coming.
Yeah.
Right? Totally aware, looking, you know, but also coping really well.
Are you surprised by how well you're coping?
Yes. Yeah, but it's also that I know that I'm made for these times as well. And then it comes back to faith. Like we circle back around and it's like, what is it? But I know it, but I feel it, but I've never lent into it before, but here I am and it feels so right.
So basically strip away Australia's McDonald's fat and our religious apathy, and suddenly you find we're really strong spiritual beings.
Oh, we're incredible. And it's and to find your tribe.
Yeah.
How powerful is that? It's special.
And it does feel like a tribe.
Yeah.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Damien, why don't you come in just to wrap it up the day, just squeeze you in the middle.
Kate's going to come in too, though. I'm going to do Kate.
Oh, you want to do Kate?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
And then
Kate is our
Kate.
preacher.
We can finish.
Thank you so much.
We can.
She's gone.
I'll do Kate.
I'll
and
let
then,
Damien.
and then
Kate.
we'll come back and finish up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep. And that will be close to.
You're so good.
Okay, so Michael and Carla were just talking about the spiritual nature of this battle, and now I've got which is a perfect segue to Kate Grace. Kate Grace sort of friended me on Facebook, didn't you? Sort of saw from a distance things that were happening, things that you were discontent with, and we sort of become Facebook friends and stuff. And now it's amazing because I see here you are in person at this event in Ballarat for the celebration of Eureka. There's some thousands of people in this park just an hour ago, and now it's all cleared up very peacefully, and it's a nice day here. But Kate, you certainly see this battle in a spiritual sense, I would say, yeah, and you have some real insights into that. So could you share some of that with us?
It's a long story. I have a great insight into what's going on. I started receiving dreams in 2018 about the season that we've come into now, and the first one was an unusual dream of a bowl of coals being tipped out. That was about September 2018. And in that same year, I also went to the shops. This is an unusual sign, and opened a case of eggs that had 12 eggs that were all double yolks, which was an odd thing to find. the two things that are happening in this season are the alignment of the kingdom of heaven and the satanic trinity, and those things are happening concurrently. I had the Spirit speak to me and say that I am aligning everything, which means both kingdoms of darkness and light are in complete accord and alignment for the finishing of what the Bible calls Armageddon. That's where we're heading shortly. So people have been quite confused. They're talking about things from a political perspective, and I see things from a divine heavenly perspective. That's one of my gifts as a prophet, is to see things from heaven's eye view over the earth, like an eagle. That's why prophets are referred to as eagles. So
okay, if there's no political solution then,
Yeah.
and a lot of people say there is no political solution, and we see that the parties seem to amalgamate as one party. I don't know if there's any choice coming out with the minor parties. So what is the solution? What can we do as human beings to give ourselves some sort of solace?
there is peace in God. Jesus called himself the Prince of Peace. And this season is shaking us, splitting us into two groups, two kingdoms of people. And Jesus is calling us to be in his peace, the river of peace, and to just abide and rest in him as a matter of, like, as a discipline, actually, as a discipline. Yeah, to trust in what he said.
And how do you do that as a discipline? And what did he say?
He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. It was a pretty simple message, and he means it literally. So we put aside other things that we've put as a God in our life. The two commandments in the New Testament were love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. So we go back to the basics and we just love God with all our heart, surrender ourselves to him, and get swept up in the Holy Spirit, the move of the Spirit that's happening all around us right now. It's a beautiful time to be alive.
And do you find this time now you can talk about these sort of concepts and it's far more acceptable, whereas before you might have got a fair bit of pushback from people, or is that still the case?
Absolutely. People wouldn't listen to me before. They wouldn't receive. And this season of shaking and turmoil, chaos, is actually causing people to be really vulnerable and open, which is a really beautiful thing. So they're happy to receive, to be prayed for, and to be blessed. And I love it. It's so cool.
Okay, so you just called yourself before a prophet. So what does that mean to you?
So a prophet is a messenger from God who's been appointed. I had a dream encounter where I heard the voice of God, and he said, I am a prophet, and if you want to raise the dead, you need to be one with me. And so I've been growing in my gifting as a prophet to listen to the voice of God every day, visions and words, and to deliver those words to people that he gives to me.
How do you grow in a gift like that? How do you do that?
I've been trained by some pretty cool prophets around the world. Partly that's the journey, but every day I sit in Jesus' presence and I walk with him, and he shows me in visions and in words what we're doing for the day. And all I need to do is to pay attention, to listen, to read my Bible every day and listen to what he's saying to me. And then I just give the messages that he gives.
So what part of the Bible have you read today?
Today I was reading about Moses, actually, in Exodus, where he was saying to God how he felt ill-equipped for the job. He felt like he wasn't adequate for the task. And God said, I'm going to be the one who speaks through you. I'm going to give you the words to say.
Is that something you feel? Do you feel like you're inadequate for this job?
Absolutely. Totally. It's a crazy job. It's a hard job, right? It's a huge burden to carry in some respects, but it's me. It's how he made me. And when you walk in your authentic identity, how you've been created by God, it's a beautiful place to be, and it's powerful.
So how did you come to be, it seems like a superfluous question, because I know you'll say, well, God brought you here, but how did you get to Ballarat today? What was that journey?
So I was kind of itching. I couldn't sit still yesterday watching the protests and the marches, and I couldn't stay home. And then
where were you yesterday watching the protests and marches?
I was in Sydney. Yeah, I was watching them protest in Sydney, and I had to book a ticket, so I just jumped on a train. In fact, I just went to the station, booked the ticket as I got there, and jumped on the train. And I arrived at 7:30 in the morning.
And were they asking about your vaccination status?
No, not at all. No, New South Wales residents are free to travel to Victoria. So that's all good. There was no interruptions, only mask wearing on the train. That was it. And really, the train guards didn't even have much of an interest in the mask wearing, to be quite frank.
So there's a message there, Daniel Andrews. I mean, I know we're saying there's no political solution, but Dominic Perrottet is allowing people to travel, not declaring their vaccination status. So is it possible maybe that we could travel across our nation, which is
Tell him
that has been federated in 1901?
Yeah, the Victorians aren't allowed to leave this state unvaccinated, which is a little bit unusual because people in New South Wales are free to travel between Victoria and New South Wales to visit each other. It's fantastic. So I had no interruptions, no difficulties at all. And it's a blessing to be here in Victoria with these beautiful people, to talk with them and to pray with them. How glorious.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming all the
You're
way.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
No worries. You're
Cafe
welcome.
Lockdown.
Jump in and we'll finish off because we've made it to over an hour too, mate. So that's great. Well, no, mate, how'd you go today? Did you have a good day?
Nah, it sucked.
Yeah, it was terrible, wasn't it? Just because he didn't get to speak. No, it was great. It was a relief, wasn't it? It was a relief not to having to speak today.
It was a relief not to have to talk. I just walked around meeting people as usual. They're beautiful. Everything's stripped away, and yet they're coming together. They're joyous. They're supportive. I really feel it's redefining who we are as Australians.
Did you expect this many people to be here in Ballarat?
No, I was really surprised by the numbers, and they were really loud. They were really determined to have their say, and and they were just. And there's not only that. This was the most amazing thing. Like yesterday with the trains, I met one woman who told me one of the problems with the trains coming from the country towns is that when the protest is on, it's standing room only, and the conductors squeeze everyone in. They come on, we all got to get there. They squeeze them in. So wherever they come from, even if it's from 4 hours away, if they're coming on the train, it's standing room all the way. They're so determined to come to the march. That's incredible.
Was there something about Spirit of Eureka that spoke to you? Like, it's not something I've really thought about much, but I'm starting to think about that battle and 30 men that perished. 30, that's a lot. The state killed 30 people for them to achieve it. I don't know. There's something that really resonated with me today in that. What about yourself?
Well, I think with those 30, the most amazing thing is everyone's still carrying the flag. That flag now is everywhere. It's on all the building sites, even though CMFEU is corrupt as it is. But here, it's flying everywhere. At every march, we see it. People are wearing it proudly. Even people who don't know the story behind it know that it's a symbol of something good about Australia.
There's some solution in that, isn't there? Like connecting with our tradition. Like there's a couple of people who were speaking today. They're actually direct descendants from that rebellion. Peter Laylaw too. I think his great grandson or something was talking on the phone and addressing the crowd as well. So I think tradition is a real answer and antidote to what we're being confronted with this sort of new globalist order they're trying to impose on us.
Yeah, agreed. The other most amazing thing was though they closed the museum. They closed most of the town because there was going to be a protest. So the Cossack's wife, she couldn't buy a coffee anywhere. She couldn't buy anything. The only place that was open was a servo. They shut the town down because they were so frightened or disgusted, or whatever the problem was with this protest.
They heard the extremists were coming. That's what I heard. Some said, "No, we're going to shut our shop today because the extremists are coming," because they've had such a great steady flow of business over the last 2 years. They thought, we can just afford to take the day off when there's an influx of 10 or 15,000 people coming in. I mean, it's the perversity upon perversity is amazing, isn't it?
We should actually make us angry that they call us that, but it's so funny because we're so the opposite. I mean, what it actually is, if you come to these marches, what you'll actually find is the people are beautiful. Everything that is good about the Australian spirit is in the march. It is just wonderful. And that's why I think they're calling it such nasty names, because if it gets out how beautiful it is, more people are going to come, because the crowd is actually defending and selling the future that most of you want. That's the beauty of it. And that's why they've got to treat us with such disdain. I mean, calling us Nazis is a joke. Like today, there was so many people of color there. I mean, it was just hilarious. Even Jerry, the Sudanese, you call him the white supremacist, he's falling around laughing.
The South Sudanese that we all want to go to South Sudan now to escape this. It's incredible, And look at our team; it's growing. We've now got a cutter too, who's taking the sun out. So it's not France.
We are totally.
We are just growing and growing and growing. Got Barry here on sound and camera,
Barry's
and
amazing.
Nick is, we're not exactly sure about Nick, but we just let him tag along. So it's great. So I think
I am excited though. I mean, basically, Damien and I are thinking of like Morgan does 4 shows, so we might lessen the shows, but actually people still want the thing. So maybe Carla and some other people come on and maybe do another few days. And I think getting women's issues, youth issues, stuff like that is something really interesting to keep it alive and really interesting to talk about.
Carla Bonner and Tom Vogel too, with both of them have been really good, really helping us out. Yep.
Yeah.
And Stephen, of course, who drives us around in the
Steve's
van.
amazing.
It's quite an amazing little sort of team, isn't it? Like little sort of family, There's no arguments really. We get on pretty well.
Yeah, that's right. And on the 10th, at the moment, we're coming to Shepparton. At the moment,
Look out, Shep.
Toph is coming with us. Rukshan might tag along. We're going to try to talk Marky in coming. And who knows, even Morgan. So they're going to let us drive the Reignite truck. So we're going to bring up the.
You've learned Topher's name. You don't call him Tofu anymore, which is good. Sometimes you'd say it to him, and I'm thinking.
No, he gave me a cigar, so I've learned his name.
Oh, okay.
He gave us some cigar last night. And last night, ASIO, we sort of had a secret meeting somewhere of all the leaders. You missed your chance, guys. Oh my God, your drone would have just had an orgasm if you'd seen how many big names were in that meeting.
Table service and everything, ASIO.
Yeah. Nah, is what we should be saying. So there's so at the moment, that's the fight, though. The great thing at the moment is we lost the battle of the bill. I was really worried that a lot of people would get despondent. Maybe even the politicians thought our spirit would be crushed. But we are here. We are fighting, and it's coming up. And the battle now is for the children. That's it. And if you want to get between a mother or even a father, to be honest, you want to get between a parent and their child, and good luck.
And on that note, I think we've done pretty well, mate.
Done pretty well.
Good stuff.
Done pretty well. We're back in the studio tomorrow.
Thanks very much, Australia.
Whatever we are. Take care.
Good night.